Our last set of notes in Unit 11 are 1110 and 1111. We are going to be solving radical equations. So you can see that there are square roots in our equations. So the steps are listed here. Step 1 is to make sure the radical is isolated. That means there's nothing on the outside of it, nothing being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided on the outside. So if you look down at number 2, there's stuff on the inside, but nothing on the outside. So once you have the square root all by itself, then you're going to square both sides of the equation. The reason is because anything, if you have a square root squared, remember that just means they cancel each other out and you are left with what's inside. Then you're going to just solve the equation like you know how, and then check for extraneous solutions. An extraneous solution means a solution that does not work in the original problem. So that means you should always check your answers to make sure they work. Now, as we go through these notes, I will show you when things aren't going to work even without plugging them back in. So if we look down at number 1, there's nothing on the outside of the equation, or outside the radical, so we're going to square this and square this. So the square root of x squared is just x equals 9 squared is 81, and we are finished. Technically, to check, you would take the square root of 81 in your calculator and you would get 9, so you are fine. We're going to do just the odds in this video, and then we'll do the evens in another video. So number 3, the square root is all by itself, so you're going to square this side and square that side. Now, because I don't like to have my variable on the other side, I'm going to switch these two around. So the square root of 4y is just 4y. Whatever is under the square root sign just comes out. 6 squared is 36. So then to get y by itself, I divide by 4, y equals 9. So again, what you should do is type in square root 4 times 9 and make sure it gives you 6, and it does. Number 5, you still have nothing on the outside. So that minus 1 is under the square root sign. So you're good to go ahead and square and square. So again, 5m minus 1 is what comes out on the left-hand side. Whatever's underneath the square root sign comes back out. 13 squared is 169. Now we just solve it like a regular equation. Add 1 to both sides. That goes away. 5m equals 170. Divide by 5, m equals 34. So in your calculator, you're going to put square root 5 times 34 minus 1. Make sure it gives you 13, and it does. So we have not had any extraneous solutions yet. Here's where we get to where we have to actually solve for the radical first before we can square. So as you can see, the minus 7 is on the outside. It is not underneath. So we have to get rid of that first. So the first thing we need to do is add 7 to both sides. Square root of x, those go away, equals negative 6 plus 7 is 1. Then I square it, and I get x equals 1. A lot of people think the answer is 2. 1 squared is just 1. So when you type this into your calculator, you need to make sure you end the square root sign after the 1, and then minus 7 to give you negative 6. Number 9. First we would subtract 1 from both sides, since that's on the outside. We still have a negative sign. Square root of x plus 2 equals 3. Then we're going to divide by negative 1 and get the square root of x plus 2 equal to negative 3. Now we're going to square both sides. Make sure you do -3 squared. So x plus 2 is equal to 9. Subtract 2 from both sides, and x equals 7, we believe is the answer. Now here's what you have to realize. If you plug this back in up here, so if we check it, 1 minus the square root of 7 plus 2. 7 plus 2 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So 1 minus 3 does not equal 4. So that's why you should always check your answers. 1 minus 3 does not equal 4. So this is an extraneous solution. So there are actually no solutions to this. So if you get an answer and plug it in and it doesn't work, you need to actually change your answer to no solutions. The reason is we won't take a square root and get a negative number. So some people can figure it out kind of in these steps that it won't work and there's no solutions. Okay, you can't do 1 minus a positive number and get a positive 4. Number 11. First we have to get rid of the minus 11. So one thing that kind of helps people is if you replace the radical sign, the square root sign, with an x, that's what the equation technically looks like to start with. So first you have to get rid of the 11 and then the 2. It's just you have your square root sign that you're solving for first. So plus 11, 2 square root of k minus 4 equals 8. Divide by 2. Square root of k minus 4 is equal to 4. So we're going to square both sides and get k minus 4 is equal to 16. So we add 4 and get k equals 20. So again, you should plug that into your calculator. 2 square root 20 minus 4. Make sure you either end the parenthesis or arrow out of the square root, depending on what calculator you have, before you do the minus 11 to get you -3. And it does work. So your answer is k equals -20. Now our last two, there are square roots on both sides. So your first step is to just square both sides. So if you've got square roots on both sides, you're just going to square them both right away. So we would have r equals 42 minus 2r. And then we solve that one. So we would do plus 2r to move it to this side. So remember that's 1 plus 2 gives us 3r equals 42. Those canceled out. Divide by 3 and r equals 14. This one's a little bit trickier because you're going to have a weird decimal when you type them in. Okay, so square root of 14 is going to give you a really weird decimal. 3.74165, so on and so forth. So just kind of recognize that and then do the square root of 42 minus 2 times 14 and make sure it's the same weird decimal, and it is. So that's your correct answer. And 15, again, both sides are square roots, so we square both sides. P plus 8 equals 2 minus P. So I personally am going to add P to both sides to get rid of this one. 2P plus 8 equals 2. Subtract 8 from both sides. 2P equals -6. Divide by 2. P equals -3. So again, you're going to do -3 plus 8, which would give us the square root of 5, and that will give you a weird decimal. And then the square root of 2 minus -3, which is also the square root of 5. So those two do equal the same thing. So your steps again to get the square root by itself if needed. Square both sides. Whatever's under the square root sign is what will come out. solve your equation like regular, and then you should always check your answer, because every once in a while you are going to get an answer that does not work, like we did in number 9. So you need to check all of your answers. If it doesn't end up working, you need to write no solution.